Hiya, I'm Bruce Fumi. I'm going to tell you about a day when Scotland's independence hung on a thread. And the only thing standing in the way of an English king with scissors was a wee 10-year-old laddie. If this video's for you, then keep watching, and if you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then hit the subscribe button at the bottom right and click the notification bell to make sure that they tell you when I bring out new videos. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. Boxing Day is normally pretty lazy and uneventful, isn't it? Well, let me take you back to 1251. Scotland had only recently been formed. I mean, it had been coming for a couple of hundred years. But so had Christmas. Well, Christmas was here. In the 9th century, Pictland and Dalriada had come together after nearly buckling under the Viking threat. And then, a couple hundred years ago, growing in confidence, Malcolm II, followed by his grandson Malcolm Canmore, had grabbed a slightly insecure hold over the northern parts of what had been the kingdoms of Strathclyde and Northumbria, taking a fragile border down to a line between the Solway Firth in the west and the Tweed in the east. Now later, Malcolm Canmore's grandson, William I, had been forced to submit Scotland to the King of England. That was 75 years ago now. But it's still an essential part of this story. If you want more detail, I'll leave a link at the end to the two videos called The King Who Lost Scotland. You should watch them. It'll help you to understand just how significant the events that I'm going to relate today are. Anyway, Scotland was now out of the woods, and they'd finally agreed a border in 1237 at the Treaty of York between Alexander II of Scotland and Henry III of England. Oh, thank goodness that that's sorted. We'll never hear about that again, will we? They then arranged that Alexander's son and Henry's daughter would marry when they were both old enough. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you today is the story of the groom of that marriage. So imagine that you're the 10-year-old boy Alexander. For the last 3 years, you've been Alexander III of Scotland. But let's face it, you're still a wee boy. Your dad, Alexander II, died when you were 7. It was on a trip to the Hebrides. Something about Norwegians and sovereignty, or I don't know, you were only 7. Today is Boxing Day 3 years later. It's now time for that wedding. Because at 10 years old, you've now come of age, apparently. 10. I remember when I was 10 years old, and the shame and embarrassment of having to ask a girl at the other side of the gym hall for Scottish country dancing. Imagine if you had to marry her. And not just in front of your classmates. All the gentry, the nobility of the realm, the bishops, the barons, and the dinner ladies. You're in another country. Everyone's looking at you. You're still in primary 5. And all the English kids have got beards. The girl you're marrying's got a beard. She's only in primary 6. Yesterday was already pretty stressful. You'd been knighted in this big ceremony on Christmas Day by her dad. Then, on Boxing Day, you get married. Now, I have no way of imagining what that must be like for a 10-year-old kid. 2 traumatically stressful days in a row. But it's not over. You see, in that Treaty of York, you remember the one where the borders between the two countries were agreed by your parents? Well, there are some lands in England that belong to you, but, well, they don't actually belong to you. Well, they do belong to you, but her dad gave them to you. So they're yours, but they're really your new wife's dad's. It's all kind of adult stuff, but you've got to do this ceremony where you say to him that you'll look after the land, but it's his land really, and you're just kind of looking after it, or something like that. Anyway, now there's all that to do, and unless you get it right, you won't get to play with your Pokemon cards. So there's another big ceremony. And you have to walk towards the girl's dad. You bow down and put your hands out like you were praying. He clasps his hands around yours. Wow, they're big hands. You swear to become Henry's man for life for your lands in England, including the liberty of Tyndale in Northumbria and the honour of Penrith in the southwest in Cumberland. Thank goodness that's over, eh? You've never even been to the honour of Penrith. Now Pokemon cards. But just as you're about to retreat, the hands of this big man press your hands together tighter so that you can't move. Now, young knight, you must also perform an act of homage for your kingdom of Scotland. You can acknowledge this by putting your hand on this book and swearing a solemn oath that you will be faithful to your lord, the King of the English, to whom you owe allegiance, as your predecessors have done, as is plainly written in the chronicles in many parts. Can you put yourself into the mind of a 10-year-old boy? Towering over you is the King of England. A king not like you, but a man king. Before your mother, your dad had been married to this man's sister. You feel a strength in those hands that you could never resist. Your heart races, your mind is numb. This man had tried to impose these same demands on your dad. That's what led to this marriage. Has he been planning for this since before you were born? How far back? Is this all because your granddad, William I? What if you say no? What will he do? Will there be a fight? Can you escape? What if you say yes? The King of England will own Scotland. Your heart shudders. You take a breath and then you stand up and you say, I've come here peacefully and for the honour of the King of England, and by his command, that by a means of marriage tie, I may ally myself to him. I could not give him an answer on such a new and difficult question, for I have not held full deliberation in this matter with my nobles, or taken proper counsel, as so difficult a question requires. Henry looks round. He's thinking. Maybe thinking his chance will come again. His daughter's wedding celebrations might not be the time. And so you step back to your nobles. Scotland is yours, held from God with no Englishman in between. Scotland is saved. Now, I told my wife this tale, and she said, aye, but his advisors probably warned him that something like that might happen. Yeah, I'm sure they did. But when you were a 10-year-old boy or girl and somebody told you that something really scary might happen, it didn't make it less intimidating. It just meant you had more time to think about it. Young Alexander met the challenge and passed the test. He went on to be a kind, wise and noble king whose reign brought peace and prosperity. But 35 years later, after the girl that he married yesterday had died, one night, on the way back to his second wife, a fall from his horse meant that he too died suddenly and without heiress. Then there was another, less forgiving English king waiting in the wings with the same demand. Edward Longshanks. But that's a story for another day. The link to the 2 video series telling the story of Alexander's granddad, William I, the king who lost Scotland, is here. If you've enjoyed this Christmas tale, then spread the word. Hamendachas can be lamb alive. Cheerio, Rasta.